Welcome to another episode of Flag Stays Down podcast. 1-1 draw today with Manchester United at Old Trafford. Ruud van Nistelrooy, interim manager, getting a new manager bounce, of course, against our beloved Blues. But hey, let's go around the horn here first. Not much of a horn, just a little trumpet. It's just me and Matt
I've,
tonight.
I've, I've been told much worse, so that's all right.
Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a good weekend, a busy weekend. Um, started off Saturday, obviously, Collins, as you know, because you were there. Nice little coffee and breakfast session with both our families. So always good when we can get together. So definitely enjoyed that. And then right after we went to my wife, myself, and our son, we went to the Betty Byrne Children's Museum. So he had a blast, just running around, doing everything. It's a fun little place if you need a place to kind of have your kid burn some energy. That's the place to do it. But yeah, then after that, I before anybody starts to yell at me, I did put up my Christmas lights, but I did not turn them on. I wanted to get them up before it gets too cold. It was a halfway decent weekend as far as temperature wise, so I at least got them up. They're done, but they are not turned on. So I just want to preface that. But yes, my lights are up. I did that Saturday and I finished that today. And then just actually right before potting, just got back from my parents' house, just kind of hung out with them for a little bit and went through some old memories of a very young Matthew way back in the day. So definitely some hidden gems in there. But no, all in all, is a good weekend. Collins, how was your weekend, man?
It was good. It's good. Like you said, starting off nice little brunch Saturday. Good to see you and the family. And then went to Ford Madison's first ever home playoff game, playing against Charlotte Independence last night at Breeze Stevens Field. They also came away with their first ever playoff win. And luckily, for those of you who don't know USL League One the way I do here, Northern Colorado Hailstorm lost. They were the 2 seed in the playoffs, which means Ford Madison will get their second home playoff game next week. So very excited to go to that as well. Make sure to follow them because they are a blast. But no, then we're coming away with a point this morning against United. It is what it is. Which, man, like thinking about it at this point last year, it would have been fuming, would have been just kind of over it. But I don't know. This year, a little bit more positive vibes. At least
A
is my
point
feeling.
last year would have been a big deal.
It would have felt though like a loss.
Hmm, hard to say. Depending, I mean, if you look at the recent run of form, maybe going into the United match, that would probably drastically change things. But yeah, it was an interesting one. A lot of back and forth in this one. Seemed a lot more open than I would have anticipated.
Yeah, a lot more open than I like. Definitely a stressful watch at times. But we got goals courtesy of a Bruno Fernandez penalty. Moises Caicedo then levels it 4 minutes later, and we end 1-1. I do want to talk about Moises Caicedo, man of the match. He won our poll. We're not even going to do that segment at the end. He won. He got all of the votes. So Caicedo has been kind of building into his own, kind of exceeding his right form over the last few weeks. Are we finally seeing what we paid all that money for?
So I when I was listening to the commentary for the match, there was a very interesting point brought up, and I tend to agree with it, and I think it's something that we've kind of bounced around, from time and time again here on this pod. It's the combination of, or at least I think you can find, a similarity in Caicedo's performance and his recent performances and the level that he's playing at with, and you compare that also with the fact that he's not really playing with Enzo Fernandez anymore. I find that to be very, it's something that I think has to be talked about. I think we're seeing Caicedo in its truest form because Enzo's not out there. I think the combination of him and Lavia has turned into the combination that we wanted to see with Enzo and Caicedo. It's something that was brought up, and I completely agree with it. I think you even saw that a little bit in the United match today, with Enzo and Caicedo. I think they were on for a little bit, but it's kind of that game of, okay, do you go or do I go? Like, who goes forward, who stays back? I think Lavia kind of fits that role a little bit more. He's more of, yeah, I'll do whatever you need me to, where I think Caicedo and Enzo together is more of a, you know, not sure who should do what when, because they can both kind of do the same thing. But Caicedo's playing out of his mind right now. That goal that he had, fantastic, excellent finish. But yeah, I think that there's something to be said about Caicedo and the way he's playing, and the evident, lack of appearance from Enzo Fernandez on the starting 11, at least for the last few Premier League games.
Yeah, and we're going to go off script in just a minute here. Talk about Enzo because there was some news coming out this week about what may be going on with him. But Caicedo this year, I'm looking at Football Reference right now. In Europe's top five leagues, he's in the 95th percentile in blocks, 93rd percentile in tackles, pass pass completion percentage is up near 90%. Uh, Interceptions is up there as well. He he is about where I would expect him to be for the amount that we paid for him, and that's something we don't hear about him anymore, is how much we paid for him. Matt, I remember, I think I was with you watching Ecuador in the World Cup at Highbury. And, I remember you and I were chatting with somebody about Caicedo's up on the screen. Oh, future Chelsea player. The version of Caicedo that we're seeing now is the version that we saw or that we see for Ecuador. It just kind of commands the field there. And I hate to admit it because I love Enzo Fernandez, but I think there is something to the partnership there. The way I see it, and I made this comp in our group chat this morning. Caicedo is more like the N'Golo Kante. I think he's great at pressuring higher up the pitch, kind of where we saw Kante, where you didn't like Kante, but that works because Lavia can defend behind him. Enzo Fernandez, as we know, is not a great defender. Well, he's more of a forward-thinking player. So having Lavia behind him kind of unlocks Caicedo to do what he does up front. So, yeah, that's a good point by you, Matt. I think there is something to that. That right around when that switch was made is when we started to see an unlock.
Yeah, it's something, and as much as like we hate to admit, because we think very highly of Enzo, and we know what he's capable of. We know what he was able to do with a hernia. Like, we know he can play. It's it's just finding a way to get the best out of both of them that's become challenging. I think they both want to be that pivot, right? They both want to be that main pivot. And I think when they're both out there, they're not sure who should be the pivot. Like, they can both do it, no problem, but I think it causes more confusion of, right, is it my turn to be the pivot or is it yours? It can work in some systems, but when you have two players of that caliber, I think it's tough to have them both out there without very strict, here is your role, this is what you're doing. Like, this is your responsibility, this is your responsibility. And I don't think that they have that yet, but I think if they can get to that point, that's going to be very scary.
Let's talk a little bit about Enzo Fernandez, how much we have segment wise on this, but I do want to bring it up just for those who didn't see it. It was announced this week that Enzo and his wife, also mother of, I believe they have two children, are formally separating. I think the official reason was something, Enzo felt he had missed out on a portion of his life or something that he had spent married with her. I don't know what the politically correct way to say that is, but apparently that's been going on for the last 3-4 months, which would correlate with a bit of a downturn in Enzo's form. Matt, do you think there's anything to the off the pitch, on the pitch kind of downturns?
I would think so. Everybody is impacted differently, right? I look at a scenario, if you look at golf, and I know we don't talk much about golf here, but there was a very famous scenario that happened 6 months ago where Scotty Scheffler showed up to a tournament and was arrested and then had to go play 18 holes of golf and still shot 5, 6 under par. Like some people are able to compartmentalize things that happen outside of, their job, right? Some people handle it better than others. I'm not saying Enzo's handling it poorly, just people handle it differently. And this could be something that, it's hard not to think about the correlation between the timing of everything. To me, if I were in that situation, which I'm glad I'm not, but if I were in that situation, I'm sure that it would be impacting what I do on a day-to-day basis and probably even with my job. Like that's just how it would be. Would I, be able to like would you see it in like my facial expressions or any of my like anything like that? Probably not. But you would know that there's something in the back of your mind that's just going constantly. And it's gonna take a toll differently on different people. So I think that there's probably some to it. It could be other things that we're not hearing about, but that to me, I can definitely understand why there would be that correlation, and it does make sense from a timing perspective. As far as how much, that's up for anybody to debate, but I do think that there is a part of it that is impacting his performance.
Yeah, we see it with things not even love life related, but I think back to contract separations. Your guy, Antonio Rudiger, was a rock until he decided that he was leaving for Real Madrid. And then all of a sudden his performance started to tail off. Mason Mount was another example of that. That was a pretty harsh breakup there. And you could see that towards the end, you know, things just weren't clicking for him. So, while you and I don't have experience with separating from our spouses here, thankfully, right? Hashtag blessed. We can certainly relate to that. And my hope, again, this just might be maybe an Enzo stand, would be that the fan base could kind of rally around him a little bit because it's only going to make it tougher if the fan base kind of turns on him, which I have seen a little bit today uh, over on the old Twitter machine, calling him one of the worst signings in Chelsea history. So hopefully, good things ahead as all those proceedings come to an end for Enzo here.
Yeah, and that unfortunately, that's just the nature of being a sports fan, right? Is that a lot of times we forget that they have lives outside of us watching them a couple times a week. Like that they have lives, they go through a lot of the same stuff that we do. It's just they're on a much more public they're on display to the public. So there's just a lot there to go through. But as sports fans, we forget about that sometimes. I know watching the Green Bay Packer game today, I forgot about that a number of times, especially if we start talking about drop passes. But they have lives too. They have to go home. They watch TV, they sleep, like they do everything that any normal person does too. It's just their job is on display for the public to see and to judge and to criticize.
Well, like your Packer comparison there. Here's another great comparison. Maybe we're not rallying behind the troops here, but how about that fucking defense, huh? We got issues at wingback, which we'll get to in a little bit here, but West Fofana continues to be up and down. Midweek, Dasasi and Badi Shield looked bad. Surprisingly, Levi Colwell looks to be the most consistent out of all of our center backs. Now, I do want to talk about Fofana. He had an interesting matchup with Rasmus Højlund throughout the match, and those two were throwing bows for a lot of it. But the penalty in particular, we had a little bit of debate going on in our group chat here. I put a lot of that, on Fofana. I know Matt, you talked about Sanchez, and obviously, Sanchez is the one technically at fault there. I'll say, but what do you make of Fofana's defense? What do with the penalty, without the penalty? How has he done recently?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the penalty real quick. So the full blame is not on Sanchez, not by any stretch of the imagination. If Fofana judges that ball correctly, we're not even having this conversation, right? So there is blame to go around. Wes, obviously, he misjudged it. I don't think he was in a bad position. I just think that it was a well played ball, and he just misjudged it, thinking he could get to it, and he couldn't. The other part of it is, to me, Sanchez is a little reckless when he's coming out of goal and trying to, close players down. We've seen him do this a fair amount of times, not a ton, but enough for it to be, at least in my eyes, a concern. So to me, like, yes, that the penalty was on Sanchez. I don't think he got a ton of Hoyland. I think he made the most out of it. But at the same time, like, you have to know that you're going to get the ball or you don't make that challenge. Like, it's a very thin margin, and I understand that. But to me, it looks like he catches himself on the wrong side of that margin, on the wrong side of that line more times than not. So I think from that perspective, yes, I put blame on Bobby Sanchez, but I'm not taking anything away from Wes Fofana either. Like, he should have been able to deal with that. And if he doesn't misjudge that, or if he, let's just say, he goes and closes down Hoyland and just sprints, it's probably a different conversation. So that's kind of where I stand with the penalty. As far as Fofana, like, he's playing all right. I don't see anybody who would play better than him given the center backs that we have. I don't necessarily trust anybody else more than I would Fofana. Like, if you bring in Tosin or you bring in Badiashile or Disasi, I don't know that I would trust them any more than Fofana. I think he's been doing all right. Again, the defense as a whole has been weird. I guess is probably the best way to put it. It's been very weird. As much chaos as we cause in the midfield, we cause our own chaos with what kind of defense we're putting out there and what we're playing and the inverted wingback system and stuff like that. He's doing fine. Not great, not bad. He's doing just fine. That's kind of the where I'm at with that. I can take it or leave it, but I don't think we have anybody on our roster who could who would be performing better than him right now.
Yeah, and I saw some reports earlier today from inside Chelsea people that the plan originally was Disasi to be paired with Fofana as your starting center backs for the season. But Disasi came into camp with a bit of an injury. That would have been interesting, I think, with those two back there. But I think Fofana's return from a long-term injury has been kind of undervalued. Yeah, I think he's still readjusting to life as a everyday 90-minute a match center back there. But I think he has the same issue that Robert Sanchez does, and that's, you know, one, two, three times a game he just mentally switches off, and then, usually we'll get pounded for it. And I've been watching back the penalty specifically here. First of all, as as I'm sure Parker would mention here in this conversation, it was a great ball by Casemiro. Line drive to the to the far post there. You can see Hoyland, if you watch back, you can see Hoyland building up to that run. He's not making any secret of it. He's not dipping in between people. He runs right across the face of Fofana and loops back around, goes in behind him as soon as that ball is hit. Fofana doesn't really make a move. He kind of takes a couple stutter steps and decides he's going to go up for a header. I think you're right. I think absolutely, you could follow Hoyland. Yeah, I think at that point you kind of risk he might be offsides. You can let him go or take a couple steps and then go for that ball. But he did a terrible job judging where that ball was. And I've seen that pretty consistently now over the last couple of weeks. But like you said, I don't know if there's anybody on this roster you could put in that would do a better job. I think transitioning here, I think one option that could be interesting, but I wouldn't want to see it anytime soon, would be Reece James at center back, since we have an issue with too many wingbacks for only two positions. Mark Cucurella did not get the start today. We once again saw Reece James at left back, Melo Gusto at right back. Matt, how you feeling about that system?
I'll let you lead with this one because we talked about this pre-pod and I'm interested on your take on this.
Well, you know how much I like Cucurella. And I thought absolutely when he came on, yes, I realized I believe he came on before we conceded the goal. So he was on when we conceded. But he just provides stability back there, man. He's a fighter. He was going at it with Rashford back there. Yeah, it would, which I appreciate. Anytime you get the guy you're defending riled up, I appreciate that. But like I said, getting back to it, he provided stability in a position that did not have it for much of the match. Garnacho and Rashford were kind of allowed free range for much of the match, especially on counterattacks. Cucurella kind of put an end to that when he came on. Especially as Manchester United were trying to retake the lead. Then 5 minutes later, so I don't know why he didn't start, but I'm not a fan of Reece James on that side, uh, and Gusto on the other. There's too much chaos with those two on the pitch together.
Yeah, so as you were talking, as you were just kind of going through, I had a thought, and it's if you're bringing back Reece James after a long injury, right? He's been out for 6 months at least, something like that. If you go back to like last season with what, an appearance and a half, something like that. He had one where he got red carded, and the next match he was injured or something. Like, and so you're gonna bring him back, cool. You bring him back as a left back? To me, that doesn't make sense. I'm confused by it. I think what, and I know you had said that, people are starting to kind of turn on Gusto a little bit. His delivery is not great on the right side. We know that. But if that's the case, why not put Reese on the right? You know he can deliver a ball. Keep Malo Gusto at a left back. He's done well at left back. He hasn't really had an issue. That'll allow him to play, I think, what most people believe is the correct way to play in this Maresca system, where it's the left back that is the inverted wing back, not necessarily the right back. To me, it seems to work out better that way. If you, at least what we've seen with Cucurella and Gusto, if Gusto is able to kind of just sit back a little bit, yeah, he can come up a little bit in midfield, that's fine. But if you have Cucurella just kind of running that whole inverted left back position, it works out so much better. I think when you have both of them doing it and Gusto so far up the pitch, now you're essentially kind of like a back two. And you also have a Reece James coming back from injury, not playing in his natural position or a position that he's probably the most comfortable in. He's not able to be as useful whipping those balls into the box, which we know he can do extremely well. I don't understand why it's there, and the more I see it, as far as the last couple of matches, is the more I see it, the more I don't like it. It just does not seem to work. Why Cucurella didn't start is a really good question, but I just to me it's just not working. Go back to what you know and what has worked for you, and I think you're spot on with Cucurella for a center back pairing that is somewhat unstable. He provides that stability. He knows what his job is. He knows what his responsibilities are. That's his spot. And then let Reese and Malo Gusto do it from there. You have your pros and cons with Malo and Reese on the right, but you got to figure out what's the best case scenario depending on who your opposition is.
Yeah, and the other thing I feel like this is just based off of limited viewings here, but you're not utilizing Reece James's ability to whip in a ball on that left side. That's not his strong foot over there. He's better on his right than he is on his left. It, and he's I'm gonna get crucified for this one. Reece James isn't that great of a defender either. He's above average. I don't think he's anything special. I don't expect everything that comes to him to be stopped immediately. And part of that is due to the injury and coming back from injury and all that. But so what's the point of putting him on the left? Like I just don't see it. You're not putting him on his strong foot. You're not putting him there specifically to defend a certain player. So is it just to have him as your captain out on the pitch? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's definitely perplexing. Like as an experiment, sure, it's fine. Let's see what happens. But I don't think the experiment is working too well.
So one thing we may need to experiment with is the attack, and that's not something we've had to say a whole lot this year. But one thing I noticed in this one against Manchester United, Nico Jackson was kind of taken out of the match, as was Cole Palmer to a lesser extent, but Jackson specifically. Additionally, this season and then a little bit towards the end of last season, a lot of what would happen be a ball would come from the center back. Jackson would come up almost into the midfield to take it, distribute from there, occasionally coming from Caicedo, Enzo, et cetera, et cetera. But a deep ball coming into Jackson as a hold up striker wasn't really allowed to do that today. I don't know if it was Manchester United's strategy there to take him out of the game. Don't let Nico beat you. Uh, but it kind of cut off the head of or one of the heads of the three-headed monster of our attack. And we didn't really seem to have a counter punch for it. Yeah, am I reading too much into that? Am I giving Ruud van Nistelrooy too much credit, or is it just an off day for Nico?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things at play. I think you hit it well with the center backs kind of hounding Nicholas Jackson, which if you think about it, if you have somebody like a Ruud van Nistelrooy, somebody who was a very prolific striker, if you have him as your manager, he's gonna know what's best to hold a striker. And keep in mind, Nico and Cole Palmer are, I think, top five in goals in the Premier League this season. So, like their names are out there. Like this is nothing new. But I think, even Van Nistelrooy, right? Like former striker, he knows how to be stopped, right? Like that's kind of what he's supposed to do. So I give credit there. Also, I think that we were just having a lot of success on the wings getting into dangerous spots. And, that's the one thing I've seen that hasn't been the strongest of points for Nico is when we do get the ball out to the wing, then I feel like Nico might have a run or two in the box. But other than that, he's not really the target guy a lot of times. A lot of times we're looking for like the cutback or we're waiting for more people to get into the box so we have more targets. He is kind of your kick it, kick it long and let him go chase it. Like he's that kind of style. Didn't have many of those opportunities today. A lot of the stuff that we were producing that was positive was coming from the wings and kind of circling the ball around and looking for openings and some one touch stuff. So I think it was a combination of things, right? You chalk it up to the off day, chalk it up to United kind of locking him down. But yeah, he just didn't have the opportunities that he's used to getting. So it ended up being a very quiet day for Nico compared to what we've seen so far to start the season.
So would you have made a switch? I mean, I don't fault Enzo Maresca for much. I think his man management has been pretty spot on so far this year. But Nico out there clearly wasn't working. Is that a place that you would have made a sub? I mean, we made what, three subs? So we had two more available.
To me, I would have changed it up. I think at that point you go with somebody who's I think a little bit more creative, somebody who gives you that different look. Maybe, we could throw off whoever we want, but you know, to me, that felt like something where an Nkunku would have had some success, even going up against the two center backs. I think Nkunku provides something different. He does have some pace, he does have some power, but he's also, I think, a little bit more dynamic and creative than Nico is, where he can link up, he can find those little pockets and kind of make some things happen. Which, yes, Nico does from time to time, but I don't think he's as good at it as somebody like Christopher Nkunku or even a João Felix. I don't think Felix would have fared as well going up against the two center backs from United. To me, Nkunku, I think would have been a fine swap to make, just to give a different look and maybe something else to think about.
Yeah, I was thinking him and João Felix. Either one of those two would have been a great move for Nico. You have either one of those kind of acting as a false nine, them and Palmer kind of floating there in the middle and kind of working off of each other there. But I was thinking as the match was going on, man, isn't this what we went out and signed Christopher Nkunku for? Big name player, Bundesliga top scorer. You want him playing against a Manchester United. João Felix has played for some of the better clubs in the world. Has played great football for Barcelona, for Atletico Madrid. This is a situation that he has seen before that he could thrive in. So I do have to admit this is probably one of the first times I've been critical of Maresca, but it's also in the back of your mind you got to be thinking, hey, Nico's going to find it at some point. All he needs is one chance at this point, right?
Yep. Yeah, and like again, I get it, but at the same time, like it was usually when with Nico, he's had a couple opportunities already. And then he gets one and not like full blown, like he should have scored opportunities, but some half chances and stuff like that. He didn't really get a lot of those. So I think he was still kind of trying to find his place in the game. But I think in Kunku, I think he's able to adapt to I think he's able to adapt to the game a little bit better than Nico Jackson. So I would have liked to have seen that switch be made. But one switch I did like and which I was happy to see was Mudryk come on. I think that was a perfect game for him to come in, right? You have Diego Dalot on the right. He's already got a card from earlier in the game. Go at him. Use that speed, go at him, try to force him into something. And I thought Mudryk did well when he had his opportunities just to kind of bomb down the left and take the ball forward. He was finding himself in little pockets. I liked what I saw of him for the limited amount of time, but it's good to see that he's at least getting, I think, some more consistent minutes.
Yeah, it's been a nice play by Maresca here, limiting the minutes, kind of calling him to action, pressers, and then feeding him a little bit at a time here. I wasn't as impressed with Mudryk today, but I was happy with that substitution, especially coming on for Noni, who man, that second half was not great for him. All right, well, one last nice little controversial point for the day, and that is the yellow, red, orange, whatever color card you want to give it for Lisandro Martinez after hacking down Cole Palmer in the 92nd minute. Matt, you want to walk us through, what happened and why it's most certainly a red?
Yeah. Uh, I don't know if anything is certainly a red anymore. But yeah, I mean, Cole makes a nice move, plays a ball just a little bit out in front of him, makes a nice play around Martinez, who goes in with what I would call a high boot and catches him not once but twice actually. Catches him once with the studs on the knee, and then on the way down, I'm pretty sure that he caught him on the toe or the ankle as well. It went to VAR. It was on field yellow, went to VAR, somehow stayed a yellow. I I didn't think the officiating was terrible this game. I thought that it was relatively kind of just, let the boys play and, you had to actually earn your fouls, which I like that in a high profile game, right? A big matchup, big teams. I like that. Let the guys play. I'm fine with that. It was relatively consistent, but there were some things that I thought obviously should have been yellows, and that one I thought should have been a red. If this goes to VAR, you get studs across the knee, and that's not a red. I've seen stuff get go to VAR and get red carded for less. And how that one did not become a red is beyond me. And I think even who was commentating, was that Graham Lasso who was commentating?
Yep.
He goes, if that's not the definition of endangering an opponent, then I don't know what a red card is anymore. I would agree. And in an instance like this, I would feel the same way if a Chelsea player did that too. I would be like, yeah, it's going to be hard for me to try and come up with a defense for you. Like it's studs to the knee. There's no way around that. It was a bad challenge. Definitely yellow. Real time yellow went to VAR, should have been a red. No questions asked, but somehow just maintained a yellow. I don't understand it. I never will, but here we are. Collins, what are your thoughts on it?
Here's the from the FA, the definition of serious foul play, which they say is one of the ways you can earn a red card in the match. A tackle or challenge that endangers the safety of an opponent or uses excessive force or brutality must be sanctioned as serious foul play. Any player who lunges at an opponent in challenging for the ball from the front, from the side, or from behind using one or both legs with excessive force or endangers the safety of an opponent is guilty of serious foul play. So let's break that down for a minute here. Lunges at an opponent in challenging for the ball. Absolutely. We absolutely saw Lisandro Martinez do that. You know, that could be a yellow card, it could be a foul, it could be nothing, right? Just that alone. Endangers the safety of an opponent. The ball has already left Cole Palmer's feet. Has been in the air for, I know it was slow motion replay, but quite some time by the time Martinez made contact. Studs up above the knee. I don't know where you are taught to tackle like that. Argentina, obviously, but endangers the safety of an opponent, right? How often, Matt, have you and I seen knee injuries for something less?
Hmm.
Very lucky that Cole Palmer came away from that match just with an ice bag on his knee.
If you have questions about knees, ask Ben Chilwell or Wes Fofana.
Yeah, the fact that I can understand the ruling in real time, yellow card.
Yep.
I think that's the safe way out for referees in 2024. Yellow card, we'll let VAR decide if I need to re-review that. VAR didn't even have him go over to the booth. That was astounding. I am amazed that a video assistant referee watched that probably 30 times and said, no, no, you were right. Like, maybe you don't want to re-review that at all. That's for sure yellow. I'm astounded. I know it won't happen, but Chelsea need to appeal that because Martinez should be suspended for the next match. That was a terrible play.
The other thing that I don't want to make an excuse for, but I will, and yeah, I don't agree with it, but a lot of times when you're officiating matches, like you do have to look at, okay, what's the scenario, right? Does a red card in the third minute, does it impact the current game? Is there a real reason to do it when there's only one more minute of the match left to, take them out for 3 games instead of, one or whatever the case is, right? I think it would have been a straight red then. Like that unfortunately is what goes through the minds of officials too. They have to read the game, they have to read the situation. I could see that also playing a role. It's like, okay, there's not a lot of time left. There's really no point in giving him a red, and we'll just keep it at a yellow. I could see that totally playing out. I remember hearing a story about, I think it was from Mark Clattenburg. He was officiating a match, and I forgot what it was, but a team was up 2-0, and there was supposed to be like 5 minutes of stoppage time or something like that, and they thought that that was too much. It in real time it should have been like 3, but then the team ended up losing, or the team that was down 2-0, they ended up losing like 5-0 because of like the extra time that was added when it shouldn't have been. And I remember him saying, the manager came out to me and said, I can explain a 2-0 loss. That's fine. It's a lot harder for me to explain a 5-0 loss that shouldn't have happened. Like you should have just blown the whistle at the time. Like to me, that's a legit scenario. Like I can understand that, but yeah, it's something that I know it's out there. I don't want to make an excuse for it, but you have to think about it.
I hate rational Matt, if that makes sense. All right, let's go. We'll finish with the irrational here. Put a poll up on our social media earlier, and I'm gonna add a candidate to it, and that is who has the more punchable face. I know we've done this before. We're gonna do Manchester United edition. The original poll was Garnacho. who, man, he had a fucking terrible game, and it was wonderful. Garnacho, Bruno Fernandez. I'm going to add Lissandro Martinez in there as well. Matt, who has the most punchable face?
I have a few different answers. The most punchable is Garnacho. I think second, the only reason why he's second is because I would be afraid that I would like shred my knuckles, and that's Bruno Fernandez. I would just shred my knuckles on his teeth, and I don't want that. Um, I think Hoyland is third. And then I would think out of everybody else, just because I cannot stand him, Casemiro. I cannot stand him. I've never liked him. I don't like the way that he plays. That's my top four.
I think that's fair. I went Garnacho number one. He looks like a caveman, like a caveman who wants to be living in LA, right? Um, can't stand him, and just the stupid looks on his face every time he thinks he's fouled or that he wasn't offside, even though he's offside by 3 yards. Man, I could punch his face every day between now and the end of the year, and I wouldn't be enough. Lissandro Martinez, I had completely forgot about until just watching the replays before the pod here. Yeah, man, something about Argentina. I think. Shout out to all our fans down in Argentina. Just punchable faces. Our poll though came back 56% out of Garnacho and Bruno Fernandez. 56% say Bruno Fernandez, punchable face. So clearly not worried about shredding up their hands, punching that face.
Braver men than I am, I can tell you that much.
So make sure to check out all of our polls. A man of the match, we already mentioned Caicedo. We're on X at Flag Down Pod. Matt, any closing thoughts for the evening?
Yeah. But before we go ahead and sign off, Collins, I know you're going to echo the sentiment, but shout out to Parker and his wife. I believe Collins' last update is they were headed in for the arrival of their new child. So all the best to them, and we'll be without Parks for a little bit, but we will do our best to hold the fort down until he's able to be back with us. But until then, Parks, have fun, enjoy it. Can't wait to meet the little one.
I can't wait to see delirious, sleep deprived Parker. It's gonna be my favorite. Be a lot more hostile on the pod, and I'm looking forward to
Oh, I'm sure he will. You lose a lot of filters that way.
it. All right, and my closing thought, I want to give a quick shout out. But you stole my Parker one, so I'll let you have that. But former friends of the podcast, good part of our personal lives here. Mobcraft Brewing is selling or going out of business or something. Anyways, they're not going to be around anymore at the end of this month. We just went there tonight to have the last couple drinks. I'm sure we'll be back between now and the end of the month. But yeah, just want to thank Mobcraft for supporting our pod for a little bit a couple of years ago. Yeah, good beers, good times over there, and not looking forward to November 30th. So on that note, Matthew, it's been a wonderful week, and hopefully we got some dubs to talk about next week.
Yes, sir.
Cheers.
Later.